কাউসার শোনা যাচ্ছে আমাকে? আমি আরিফ খান
জি
বলছি।
জি জি জি, শোনা যায় আরিফ ভাই।
আচ্ছা, ওকে ওকে ওকে।
ক্লিয়ার আপনার
তো
কানেকশন।
একটু আমাকে একটু ইয়ে দিও, কিউ দিও যে কখন চিফ গেস্ট এবং স্পেশাল গেস্ট জয়েন করেন।
আচ্ছা, আপনি তো থাকবেন, সামনে আছেন তো নাকি দূরে কোথাও যাবেন?
না না না, আমি ফুল টাইম আছি।
আচ্ছা, ওকে।
হ্যাঁ,
না, আমি
আমাকে কি
ভাবলাম যে অন্য কাজে হয়তো ঢুকে
না না
যাচ্ছেন।
না না, কোনো কাজ নাই, ফুল টাইম এটাতে
আচ্ছা,
এনগেজ আমি। ওনারা
ওকে।
আসলেই আমি
জি জি, আমরা
ফর্মাল
জাস্ট ওই চিফ গেস্ট আর রহমান আর ইয়ের সাথে যোগাযোগ করতেছে প্রেসিডেন্ট সাহেব। হ্যাঁ।
ওকে
হ্যাঁ,
ওকে।
জি আরিফ ভাই, আমাকে শোনা যাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ,
কাউসার বল।
শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা, চিফ গেস্ট একটু কয় মিনিট পরে শুরু কর, মানে ইয়ে করবেন আর কি, পেসে আসবেন উনি। বলছি মোবাইলে জয়েন করতে। তো
ওকে,
আমরা শুরু শুরু করে দেব, উনি ওখান থেকে ফলো করে। উনি পিএম এর সাথে কি যেন একটা কথা বলতেছেন, ওটা করেই
ঠিক
আমাদের
আছে।
ফর্মাল চলে যাবেন।
But
আর
he has joined already. He has
অলরেডি
joined.
জয়েন। ও নাইস, নাইস।
জয়েন করছে।
তাহলে আর আমাদের আব্দুর রহমান খান, আমি একটা কল দেই ওনাকে।
আরিফ ভাইয়ের ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ডটা তো ভালো। হ্যাঁ, আপনি চাঁদে চলে গেছেন ইউনিভার্সের
আচ্ছা,
কাছাকাছি।
আমরা জয়েন করছি।
এটা ভালোই লাগতেছে।
হ্যাঁ, আসসালামু আলাইকুম। আমার আবার একটা মিটিং আছে
ওই
ইন্টারকন্টিনেন্টালে।
যে এই যে
তোমরা
চেয়ারম্যান সাহেবও আসছে, তাহলে
আমাদের
শুরু করা যায়।
অর্থ উপদেষ্টা মহোদয় আসছেন?
হ্যাঁ জি, উনি
জি
অলরেডি
আসছেন।
ও, তাহলে তো
জয়েন
হইলোই,
করছেন।
তাহলে এত দেরি করার দরকার নেই। হ্যাঁ।
সো দেন ইফ প্রেসিডেন্ট পারমিটস মি দেন উই ক্যান স্টার্ট।
আচ্ছা, আমাদের শুধু ওই যে, আচ্ছা, প্রফেসর বিদিশা হক, সাইমা হক বিদিশা, উনিও জয়েন করেছেন আমাদের প্রবিসি ঢাকা ইউনিভার্সিটি। তো আমার মনে হয় আমরা সবাই আছি, তৌফিক ভাই আছেন। তো আমার মনে হয় আমাদের অনারেবল মডারেটর জন আরিফ খান, আমাদের প্রোগ্রাম শুরু করতে পারি আমরা এখন। ঠিক
থ্যাংক ইউ।
আছে, দোয়া।
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. For the interest of my introduction, I am Arif Khan, a past president of ICMAB, currently working in Shanta Asset Management as vice chairman. Would like to be moderator of this session of this very important topic today: economic agenda of new government, challenges and way forward. And we welcome all of you to this session. And we are extremely delighted to have our chief guest here today, Professor Dr. Rashid Al Mahmoud Titumir, Honorable Advisor to the Prime Minister, Ministry of Finance, and Ministry of Planning. Also, we have got special guest, Professor Dr. Saima Haq Bidisha, Pro Vice Chancellor of Dhaka University. And of course, our very favorite, Mr. Abdul Rahman Khan, FCMA, another special guest, Chairman NBR, Ministry of Finance. The paper presenter today, Mr. Taufiqul Islam Khan, Additional Director of CPD, and our President, Mr. Kausar Alam, all the dignitaries of ICME fellow members. I welcome you formally to this webinar today. We know the topic is very relevant and very timely because it is an economic agenda of a new government, the challenges and way forward. We target that the total program will be finished by 5 p.m. And we'll try to allocate our time, if possible, even a little bit better, higher, faster. We all know that currently the major economic points, if I just say 1 or 2 minutes, is macroeconomic pressure, high inflation. We have just got the recent report of inflation, which is above 9%, although it came down last couple of months, but again, it's showing high indication. And we have got very low tax GDP ratio, which is around 7%. We have got low implementation of ADP, which is also very challenging. And the private sector credit growth rate is all-time low in the last 16 years, around 6 to 7%. FDI is also low. And also our overall investment environment is not very conducive. So low level employment and the FDI, all these create pressure on the economy when we have seen our GDP growth rate has declined to around 3.6%. Although we've just recently seen World Bank and HSBC predicted that current year it can move up to 5%. So in this context, we'd like to ICMAB, the Institute of Cost and Management Accountant, one of the premier accounting body in the country, like chartered accountants. We are the two professional accounting body as per Bangladesh government's law. So ICMAB arranged this discussion. I think this is very timely. With these few initial remarks, I'd like to invite our president, Mr. Kausar Alam, FCMA. He's a veteran and he's currently working in Circle Cements as a finance director. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Kausar Alam to make his welcome remarks. Mr. Kausar Alam.
Thank you very much, Honorable Moderator, Mr. Arif Khan. Thank you. Actually, I'll be very brief. Our objective is actually to listen from our keynote presenter and also our very respected chief guest and also special guest. All are actually either practitioner or they are academician. They are actually having real life picture in mind. So our objective would be to utilize the time next almost 2 hours on this particular topic, economic agenda of new government, challenges and way forward. Actually, the very topic itself reflects that, yes, Bangladesh is a very fastest growing economy over last 2 decades or more. It has grown significantly, but we have our issues also. At this point of time, as Mr. Khan mentioned, we have more of issues than, of course, opportunities lies behind the issue. So as a formal setting, I would like to appreciate or address like our Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Rashid Al Mahmood Titumir, Honorable Chief Prime Minister, Advisor to the Prime Minister, Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Planning. Of course, we have our very respected Pro-BC University of Dhaka and also Professor Department of Economics, University of Dhaka, Professor Dr. Saima Haq Bidishab. And we have with us our very own, our fellow member, Mr. Abdul Rahman Khan, FCMA, Chairman, NBR. And we are grateful to Tawfiqul Islam Khan for your quick feedback on or agreeing with us to present on this very timely topic about the economic issues of Bangladesh. Tawfiq Bhai from CPD has joined us as the resource person, keynote presenter on today's program. So Tawfiq Bhai, thank you very much and also welcome. And importantly, our Vice Chairman, Seminar and Conference Committee, Mr. Syed Abdullah Al Mamoon, Dr. Syed Abdullah Al Mamoon, FCMA, and also our respected fellow and associate members for whom we have actually organized this particular enlightening program. So as already Mr. Khan explained the background or context of the situation or economy, so I would not go into that area. I would actually use 2-3 words about our institute. As you know, ICMAB is an institute to produce professional accountants. This is an institute under the Act of Parliament, and it has actually made significant contribution in nation building. আমাদের নলেজ জ্ঞান ভিত্তিক জাতি গঠনে সিগনিফিকেন্ট ভূমিকা পালন করেছে। আমাদের মেম্বাররা, প্রফেশনাল অ্যাকাউন্টেন্টসরা, ওনারা পাবলিক সেক্টরে কাজ করেন, মোস্টলি প্রাইভেট সেক্টরে কাজ করেন, অলসো প্র্যাকটিসিং ফার্ম হিসাবে কাজ করছেন। আমাদের অ্যারাউন্ড 1900+ মেম্বার্স আছে, আমাদের প্রায় 30,000 স্টুডেন্টস আছে। মেম্বারদের মধ্যে প্রায় 200 আর ওয়ার্কিং অ্যাব্রড, and also we are placing ourselves with the changes in the macroeconomic and digital economic situation. As we know, present government just elected less than 1 month back. So it was after a long gap, it was a democratic election and very well participated election, and also government formed with huge mandate. So there is huge expectation also from the people. So, and also as we know, I would not repeat, there are huge challenges also. So under the context, there would be more and more also macroeconomic situation locally and also globally evolving very fast. And every day is coming in a different way. So we got to actually watch. So as a professional accountants body, we always keep interest about our professional issues and also our national issues, as we are a vital part of the nation. Our members are contributing in micro to macro level to international level. So we actually try to get updated about the state of affairs happening across the country and also across the globe. So today's initiative would be one of them, and I hope our members would be enlightened from the discussion, from the presentation, and also discussion from the resource person. So I would not actually take longer time. I would actually rather stop here to give more time to our paper presenter and discussant. Once again, I would express my gratefulness on my personal behalf and also on behalf of the Institute of Cost and Management Accountants to the all resource person, particularly especially our chief guest, all special guest, and also keynote presenter for making time in this Ramadan day and joining us in this special topic. And also thank you our members for your keen interest in joining this particular session. Thank you very much. Over to Arif Bhai.
Thank you, Mr. President Kausar Alam, for a very brief, specific, and succinct opening welcome remark. Dear audience, at this point in time, we'd like to invite Mr. Taufiqul Islam Khan, Additional Director of CPD, to present his paper on this very important topic. Mr. Taufiq.
Thank you, Arif Bhai, and thanks to ICMAB to invite me. Let me just make sure my presentation is visible to all of you. I think I have shared it. I understand it is now okay. So you all can have a look at my presentation. Thank you very much again. Let me just briefly express my sincere gratitude to ICMAB and also to the honorable high guests, including the advisor to the Prime Minister and IRD Secretary and Pro Vice Chancellor of Dhaka University. My presentation is simple. I would like to set the context. I will focus on the three macroeconomic constraints that we are going to face in this spectrum. I will also try to express what are the policy choices we have. I also would like to make a brief presentation on assessment of selected election pledges, and then we'll try to put forward a realistic pathway for the new government who in fact has taken the charge of the country and steered the economy at a very challenging time. So in brief, we know that the economy is in a what we can call is in a tricky position at this moment. We can face certain challenges that we have been facing for some years now. So I'll focus on three pertinent challenges that we will look into. But at the same time, more recently, we are also facing what we call the external implications of Middle East war, and that will bring a further pressure on this current scenario. So the three pressure points or the concerns that this government will be managing in the coming months. The first one is definitely that we have a fragile macroeconomic stability and we have a weakened private investment and employment situation in the country, and there is a diminishing fiscal space. So if we put these three things together, it is very, very tricky for this government to actually pursue economic management, and they will probably have to have a certain level of trade-offs within the policy space. What I would like to present you is that how deep are these crises in a nutshell. So if we look at the inflation scenario, we can see that inflation was declining a little bit, but mostly food inflation, but not much what we call the non-food inflation. And that is one of the worrying signs for us, because the kind of policy measures undertaken by the immediate past interim government was largely dominated by the monetary tools, and it was supposed to have an impact on the non-food inflation. what we call the core inflation in economics, because that is where the demand side management usually work. But it did not make any significant dent in the inflationary trend if we look into the average inflation. The tricky choice that the new governor will have is that the past governor said that they cannot necessarily reduce the policy rates from the current level, which is 10%, unless the average inflation can go to around 7% or something. But it will be, in my view, I think it is not possible within this fiscal year, and with the new crisis, it may take another year to go down that path. So the length of the policy choice will be a tricky issue in this area. We had a more improvement over the last 1.5 years in the area of exchange rate and foreign exchange reserve. So our foreign exchange reserve was, I think, strengthened over the past 18 months or so. Primarily, if we can divide that period into two steps. One is during the FY 2025. It was mostly driven by improvement in the trade balance and coupled with overseas workers' remittance. During that time, we also received quite some amount of what we call the budgetary support from the development partners. So it helped. We were around $22 billion in reserve. That improved to around 26.5 by end of 2025. It continued in FY 25-26, and by end of February 26, it improved to $30 billion, with the exchange rate being absolutely stable. But during this period, the difference is that our trade balance is no longer on an improving path, largely because our export growth did not remain in the positive terrain. It moved to negative terrain again, and we have seen certain improvement of our import bill payments. But on the messiah in this context is still the remittance. So remittance remained as one of our major driving force behind this improvement. And another that dilemma that we have now, that we also had seen an improvement in the trade credit. So last year, FY 24-25, we repaid quite a large amount in terms of trade credit. This year, we have 7 months of data. So it improved a little bit within the trade credit. So we managed to receive more credits compared to last year. But not necessarily from the development partner. So net aid has become a major issue. What we have seen, the external implications for improving this balance of payment was actually reflected in the money supply. Because if you look at this table, you will see that our money supply was largely driven by two forces. So one is net foreign assets, which is an outcome that we had to improve our balance of payment, or we have to improve our foreign exchange reserve. So equal amount of Bangladeshi taka needed to be released in the market. So it has seen 30% growth. And also what we can see that the net government borrowing was quite substantial. So that is a huge improvement. So despite the private sector credit has been a very minimum growth, 6.6% by end of November, money supply could not be contained. It was around 9%. So money supply, which was a requirement in a way to contain inflation by managing demand side, was somehow or to some extent was dampened by the other policies or trade-offs pursued by the government. On the investment and growth side, we all know that investment has been not necessarily in a great shape over the last couple of years. And the area that I would like to highlight here is that we have around 4% of GDP growth, which was not bad given the economy was not in a situation where we can actually pursue accelerating GDP growth. But if we have to go from this 4% to the 6% trajectory, the major contribution needs to come from manufacturing and high-valued services. So if you look at this decomposition that I am presenting now, so the incremental growth needs to be from on that part. Major part should be coming from manufacturing and high-valued resources. And the implication of having a lower growth and more or less stagnant private sector investment was actually reflected in the job market. If we look at the first half of fiscal year FY 2025, which is the last 6 months of 2024, July to December, we could calculate that 21 lakh jobs was reduced or lost during that period, 18 lakh of which is actually for women. We regrettably, we do not have any more latest job data, LFS data, LFS survey, and that I think one of the regretting part of the policies pursued by the interim government, because we needed that data to actually wanted to measure the economic situation. But this, what we can actually see from the nuances, that this is one of the tricky area where the new government needs to work. But how we can use our policy space in this context, and obviously for country like Bangladesh, fiscal space or fiscal policy is the major policy that you can actually work with to handle this macroeconomic situation. But regrettably, we do not necessarily have that space. I'm presenting here the closing data from Ministry of Finance or Finance Division to actually see what happened last year, 2025. And if you can see, look at the data, we can see that our revenue budget or revenue budget went for a deficit of 40,000 crore. And that is a worrying part, because I think the overall revenue did not grow by any significant amount during that time, approximately 2% growth. But we have seen a significant jump in the recurring operating expenditure. So we did not have much space. Obviously, our foreign debt repayment also increased. It was recorded 30,000 crore. This is the amortization of principal amount that we are talking about. And as a result, we did not necessarily have a great ADP expenditure as well. So that is where I think we have seen that the challenges will be in the coming days, because we do not necessarily have a fiscal space to work with. And this has reflected in our overall macroeconomic policies. So often we also cite that the change in the exchange rate situation also contributed to that debt situation. But when we calculated the debt composition, we can see that external debt is increasing by quite substantial amount, along with the domestic debt scenario. And this is going to be one of the tricky part of macroeconomic management. The major, I think, departure that we should look into is that we should not measure the debt situation from the vantage point of debt GDP ratio. We should rather look into our debt situation in terms of whether we can repay them from our fiscal space context, or whether we have enough foreign exchange reserve to handle the foreign debt repayment. So I think these are the two indicators that we should use. Now, the Middle East war is actually has opened another Pandora box for Bangladesh economy. And as net energy importer, and by a large amount, this is one of the, I would say, that weaknesses we have over the years, that whenever the energy price bills goes up, we are always vulnerable in that context. And let me, so import is the first channel where we will find the hit. And you can see that how big is going to how big is this going to be is the question. So if we can say roughly, if we have about, say, for example, a $6 billion of import in terms of energy, gas and fuel, and we had seen oil prices being less than $70 per barrel. So that is where the price level was. Now it is going to increase quite a lot. I think it is now around $100, and we can actually have this level of average price for quite some time. Even if the war ends very quickly, there is a risk that it will remain at a higher level, because we do not necessarily know how much damage have been done in various countries in terms of oil production and their reserves. So that is one of the questions that is still unanswered, but we will definitely find out soon. But at the same time, our messiah, as I have explained, remittance is also going to be affected in the coming months. This was one of our lifelines, major lifeline, I would say the major lifeline for our economy. And that is where the comfort zone will be reduced by quite some margin. That risk is there. So BOP, if we just calculate only the oil price, the bill can go up to $3 billion to $4 billion. And then we also have seen that with oil prices, the prices of fertilizer prices have already gone up approximately around 20%, 30%. So that pressure will be there. And the space that we could create over the last 1.5 years in terms of building foreign exchange reserve can evaporate very quickly. So how much space can we release there, and how much we can actually adjust through or allow through exchange rate, but because we are kind of now following the market rate. This is one of the policy decisions that this government will have to take, and this will immediately be reflected in inflation. The higher oil price may not be, government can take a decision. I understand the government has taken a decision immediately not to reflect it within with the market oil price, although we are now following more or less what we call aligned with the international prices. But the government has that authority to not reflect it at this moment. But definitely it has to be reflected at some point. But even if we do not do it now, the electricity subsidy demand will be quite higher. And that is one of the tough decisions that the government will need to be taken in next 2-3 months. And with that, overall pressure on the fiscal side will be higher, both from the energy bills and also probably for agriculture as well. And this will have an implication on investment and employment. And the kind of targets we have now to move forward with investment and employment will be challenged by this situation. And ultimately, it will be reflected on the poverty. So in my view, we do not necessarily have a lot to gain. I could go on quite a bit, but this is where I will stop. It can be further discussed. But if you ask me how this implication will be determined in the coming days, it will depend on the length of the war and how far the damages are done in terms of global commodity market. That is something that will give us an answer. The policy choice, I'm presenting 10. I think the most important thing that the government can do at this moment is improve their fiscal space as much as possible. They need to spread their elbow to make some space there. And the tricky challenge that it will have to improve tax collection without raising new tax rates. And that is where the challenges will be. And the only way it can be done is by improving the management of tax evasion. We all will agree that there is a huge tax evasion going on in the economy, and that is one. One of the things that the government can do is that they can expedite offloading shares of profit-making SOEs. That will give the government an opportunity to have one-shot fiscal space that they will need in this time to actually manage it for at least next 1 year or so. And during that period, they should also prioritize recovering some stolen asset and bad assets from the banking sector. That is where the focus will be so that they can actually expand it. In my view, that if we are going for what we call that a little bit of expansion or a little bit depreciation of Taka, I would suggest that we should start phasing out cash incentives for remittance and export. And this is quite a huge amount. This is quite a huge amount, about 9,000 crore Taka, more than that, 12,000 crore Taka will be there on in that pot. So they need to be a little bit, in my view, to reduce it so that we can save some money from there. Obviously, there will be certain groups who will not be very comfortable when these preferences are taken out, but this is where one of the tough choices they have to make. The next thing that I would say that they should pursue very conservative public expenditure. That can be done by doing two things. One is that you pursue a path where we will prioritize expenditure areas, and for example, in the area of public investment projects, I would say that new projects should be deprioritized as much as possible. That is that the projects that were taken over the last 1 year or so, that if it is not very urgent, deprioritize it so that you can put some attention in the areas of completing projects. I think at some point they will also need to establish a floor for foreign exchange reserve. It will deplete a bit, I understand, but I think that is possible, that we also need to identify floor and then depreciate Taka accordingly. So it can be done, I think, in simultaneously, and releasing the prices of BDT at a slower pace will be more, I think, comfortable for the economy. At some point, they also need to face the passing through of fuel prices and everything on the market. So that is one. The most important two proposals that I will make is that to have a realistic revised budget. I would say the past governments over the 1.5 decade did not necessarily prepare revised budget in a prudent manner. So there was always a weaker fiscal framework for the next budget. So before going for the next budget, the revised budget has to be quite prudent. why I'm saying that, for example, in my view, this year, in the ongoing year, the revenue shortfall will be around 1 lakh crore approximately. We just need to see if there can be a push over the last few months. Obviously, higher global prices will help the government to bring some revenues also through the prices, but it may happen. So the budget needs to be adjusted accordingly. And finally, they will need to identify the election manifesto pledges which they should prioritize and how they can face. I have gone through 9, so I will not go through this. I will go through the 9 election pledges that this government has made, just going through them very briefly. One is that $1 trillion national GDP by 2034, and on an average, it needs to grow by 9%. It is very much possible. Then I would say that even if in FY26, which is the current fiscal year, it is 4% growth, real GDP I'm talking about. I would say that next year it can be improved a little bit with 5%. And then in FY 2028 onwards, it is very much possible to have a 6% real GDP growth. And it is then possible to attain this target. The next one is raising 15% of tax GDP ratio. I assume a linear progression, then we have to have about 1 percentage point annually improvement will be required. But I know that this government has also aimed for a boost in the tax GDP ratio very quickly. But then it will also require a more comprehensive and well-articulated action plan. And we will propose that in the coming budget, 2 things that this government should pursue. One is to go for an integrated tax system where you will have, we actually proposed it during our Citizens Manifesto document, that we should put together all our resources and financial transaction document system together through an integrated tax system where you will not only have income tax and other taxes, but also local taxes and property taxes there. And we would also like to have, and this is also part of the BNP's manifesto, to have a modern property tax and wealth tax system that will help us to attain 15% tax GDP ratio by 2035. Raising foreign investment to 2.5% of GDP, this will require 50% annual growth. And it is possible, I think, if we can go for offshore exploration of gas, that will help. But it is possible, but we need to also obviously improve our investment climate significantly. Power generation, 35,000 megawatt by 2030. This is something that I think it's more important will be in the area of composition, where I would say the BNP has rightly pointed out to have more least cost generation process compared to the current composition. I think that is where the emphasis should be, because currently the highest generation is around 17,000 megawatt. Returning depositors' money from liquidated Islamic banks, I think this is going to be a huge task. 100,000 crore needs to be repaid. I think annually 20,000 crore will be required from the fiscal space. And obviously, there are other banks that are in trouble. Whether we'll continue to do that, that is a matter of question. Family Card, we tried to estimate that if we try to give it 5 million rural people, rural families, it will take about 9,600 crore. Fiscal space is a major issue, but also I'm happy to see that the government will pursue proximity test, and implementation of it is a major issue. On 5% GDP to health sector public allocation, it will also require an improvement about 0.86. In fact, if we look into the actual expenditure in FY 2025, it was 0.3% of GDP. So it's a huge jump will be required in 5 years from that point. For education, it's also pretty much similar. 0.6% test point per annum will be required. And there is obviously One Teacher, One Tap program. In my humble view, this should be pursued by taking into cognizance the experience of digital classroom that the previous government pursued. So we also need to integrate it with the digital classroom vision of this government, but it's a very important milestone for this. So I tried to highlight it in a nutshell, but the realistic part, and this is my last slide, I'll stop here. My suggestion will be to have, obviously, the economic stabilization will be important for this government. And with the new challenges externally, I think this is going to be very, very tricky, and the government will need to have hard policy choices in front of them, and that is something they cannot avoid. So picking the right things and mixing economic priorities with the political priorities will be the major, I think, riddle that they have to solve. The second one is to have prepared a more credible framework for national budget for next year, and that is not easy. They need to come out of the previous brackets that we give a very large budget, may not implement full of it, of course, but I think the budget implementation, both from the revenue side and expenditure side, have come down to around 80% or something, and that is not very, I would say, a good path to start with. I think the government should also try to convene a development forum involving multi-stakeholders, not only international development partners, but also the international investors to actually achieve their goals. Obviously, they will also need to roll out an economic reform pathway, keeping the LDC transition trajectory in mind. And finally, from the next budget onwards, they will probably go for a medium-term plan in the coming days so that they can actually deliver their election pledges. But before going into that, I think phasing the election pledges will be very, very important. And I can understand that it is a very tough time for Professor Titu Mir. My best luck, best wishes to him and also to the Secretary of IRD, because we appreciate the tough task they are going to have in the coming days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Taufiqul Islam Khan, for a very, very specific presentation. Actually, I thought that you allocated time 30 minutes and you just finished it in 31 minutes time, and without any extra. Every slide had so much of information. And I think this is a very, very good discussion. I just took one note from his presentation that our revenue expenditures now cannot be covered from our domestic collection. It's 53,000 crore taka deficit, even before we talk about annual development plan. And on top of that, with the recent energy crisis, we may need additional $3 to $4 billion for importing oil and fertilizer and others. So in this context, I think the presentation is very, very important and timely. Now I'd like to invite Professor Dr. Saima Haq Bidisha, Pro Vice Chancellor of Dhaka University, for her comments on this overall economic challenge of the new government and the prospects and way forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Honorable Chief Guest, special guest, distinguished participants, and the speakers. Very good afternoon. First of all, let me thank Mr. Dr. Tauhidul Islam for setting such a good background for the discussion, because he actually touched upon everything that we all are discussing these days from an economic point of view. Now, the fact remains is when we are talking about political government, it is extremely important to set the priorities, because there are too many challenges that we have in mind, especially in the context of Middle East war and in the context of probable LDC graduation. There are a lot of things that needs to be tackled. From that point of view, if I would like to add that main issue is to priority. So from priority point of view, I think there are 2 points. One is inflation, and another is containing inflation, and another is generating employment. These are the 2 very important things that we general mass people that are actually expecting from an elected government. From that point of view, if I talk about first inflation, then one thing we actually need to think that there should be a balanced mixture of monetary instrument and efficient market management. That should be the priority. And from that point of view, as rightly mentioned and highlighted by Dr. Tawfiq, that there are several issues that needs to be put in a line. And I think on top of the macro issues, the macro management, there should be some low-hanging fruits that the government need to think about. For example, there should be an effective coordination among relevant concerned authorities like the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Commerce, NBR, Competitive Competition, in order to ensure a competitive environment in the market. And that is extremely important, because we have seen that with only the monetary policies, it is no longer possible to contain the inflation for a very long time. So that's why this management is very important. And also from that point of view, it is also very important that there should be a systematic overview of the data of production, import, overall supply and demand, so that the government can take initiative very quickly. And these are often some very low-hanging fruits, but these are overlooked. And also, I think it's very important to look at the urban dwellers, especially the low-income urban dwellers. And from that point of view, open market operation, fair price shop, different rationing system, this has to be prioritized, because when we are talking about these different measures to give some comfort to the dwellers, so urban dwellers and also the rural dwellers, it's very important that we need to allocate, when we are talking about the budget, we need to allocate more fund in these areas, because when we are talking about, for example, the urban dwellers, it's important that probably it is not possible to have a very revolutionary change in the context of inflation, given the scenario and given all of the targets that we are talking about. So, but it is possible to give some comfort to the urban dwellers and to the rural dwellers as well by some fiscal strategies, some open market strategies, and that should be a priority, and the government should prioritize in this case. space, and I think the family card is a good initiative in this context. But we can talk about it in another context. The second point is what I was thinking, that while concentrating on inflation, we should not forget, or we should not deprioritize the importance of employment generation, because we know that from a political economy point of view, it's extremely important that the job creation, the pace of the job creation keep intact. However, when I'm telling that keep intact is that if we look at the data, then we find that the pace of employment generation, that is not very optimistic in the context of Bangladesh. For example, if we see that for the last if we just take the data of 2016 to 2022, then we find that the capacity of the economy to generate employment, which we often term in terms of employment elasticity, that is very low, and especially in the manufacturing sector, it is negative. So that is something that we need to concentrate, because if we have very low absorptive capacity in the economy, that means the economy is not producing enough job, and we know that targeting unemployment is extremely important for the government. And from that point of view, I think it's important to concentrate on the CSME sector. And I think from CSME sector, very small scale policies, flexible policies, and targeted policies can do very important changes in the rural economy, and can create quite a lot of job in the rural economy, and that is least costly way. So that is a one thing that should be prioritized. And from that point of view, it's also important that when we are talking about all of these issues, it's very important that we need to also look at the how to deal with the issues of, like, for example, skill mismatch, because we know that the importance of youth employability, and from youth employability's point of view, policy decisions in order to tackle the skill mismatches, it doesn't need that much of resources, but it needs policy decision and targeted policies to deal with the skill mismatches, and to have different startup fund, different entrepreneurship capacities, and modernizing the vocational training programs in order to mobilize the potential of the youth, and to engage the youth in the economic activities in a more diverse manner. Third point, what I would like to say is, I think there is no denying that for doing all of this thing, we need a fiscal space, and we need to broaden the fiscal space. But at the same time, it is extremely challenging for the government, because if we want to put pressure on the indirect taxes, then that will trigger the inflation, which is not a very which is not actually very feasible at this point, because now we have already seen an increasing trend in the inflation in the context of inflation. So how to digitalize the structure, how to put more emphasis on direct taxation, and to add and redesign the direct taxation structure, and to redesign the tax slab, and to introduce more slabs in the upper threshold, to redesign the property tax, to redesign the wealth tax. These are some of the things that can actually lead us to a more equitable society, and that is something that should be the priority, because with this low tax GDP ratio, there is no way we can actually accomplish the targets that we are actually trying to think. But at the same time, I completely agree with Dr. Tawfiq, that is, like, when we are talking about the big infrastructure projects, we should be very careful. The government should be very careful, because because at this moment the priority is important, because of course infrastructural development is important, growth is important, but more important is the quality of growth. So when we are talking about the quality of growth, it's a growth with proper distributive justice. And when we are talking about proper distributive justice, it is also very important that we keep in mind that we need to actually boost the rural economy. And when we are talking about the boosting the rural economy, it is extremely important to create employability and to create different opportunities in the rural economy, so that they can actually connect to the urban spaces, and different policy measures that can be utilized in this context. But another very important point I think we should keep in mind, that when we are talking about all of these things, it is very important that we keep in mind about institutional governance. And from institutional governance, I think there are at least 3 areas or 3 aspects that we need to keep in mind. One is the institutional management in the context of the revenue generation. Secondly is the government spending. And thirdly is definitely the the financial structure or the banking sector of the economy, because all of these aspects are very important when we are talking about the generating the whole economy and actually integrating the whole economy in the efficient manner. So basically, I think I have talked, I don't know whether I have more time, but basically the most important thing is to prioritize and to find the enough fiscal space, to broaden the fiscal space in order to while focusing the priorities. And from that point of view, we should keep in mind that when we are talking about inflation, and when we are talking about taming inflation, and at the same time when we are talking about managing the unemployment problem, these two actually go in the different direction. So that's why it is extremely critical to prioritize and to have a very balanced approach when we are talking about the policy decision in the context of Bangladesh. Thank you. I think I will stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Saima Haq Bidisha, for a very brilliant discussion on the topic, and your suggestions are really, really remarkable, and I'm sure that Honorable Advisor here take note from those points. Now I'd like to invite our very special, our past President, Secretary IRD and NBR Chair, Mr. Abdur Rahman Khan, FCMA, to deliver his comments.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Honorable Chief Guest of today's webinar, paper presenter, special guest, President ICMAB, moderator, all respected members of ICMAB. Very good afternoon. In fact, I was just listening from the paper presenter, Dr. Taufiqul Islam Khan, very well articulated, well presented. He brought almost, every aspect of our current economic scenario, and also challenges of the new government, and also how to implement the election manifestos, what are the challenges, what can be done. Also, Ms. Saima Haq Bidisha very categorically mentioned about the real economic scenarios that we are having and what we need to do. I can only talk about my part, because
Maybe you got muted, Honorable Secretary IRD, Mr. Abdur Rahman Khan. Yeah.
sorry. So what I was just telling, that on revenue side, whenever we discuss about Bangladesh economic situation and how to make visible improvement from our current situation, the first and foremost thing or last thing is that we must generate enough revenue to create fiscal space. And Mr. Arif Khan also reiterated from our paper presented that even we are having negative fiscal space when we finance our even operating budget. So that's a very critical situation. If we want to improve generating more employment, definitely we need investment. And in order to make government and public investment, we need to save money from our operating spending as well. So this is an area that we have to be very careful, that we have to prioritize not only our development project or mega project, even we must look into the operating expenses as well. If anything are necessary, we must cut it down. And paper presenter rightly mentioned that we should even, if possible, prepare a revised budget again. But this year's revised budget has already been approved, and now it is a bit early because of the election scenario. The budget already revised. Probably the new government, I'm not sure. Probably there is no scope of revising again. But definitely we have a scope to have a pragmatic budget aiming at employment generation and also aiming at poor people to make them sustainable, because the poverty is going to be increased at a very high speed. We have a lot of problems. Then the recent Middle East war is another big problem. Every country is facing, and Bangladesh is no exception of that. I think both the paper presenter and discussant rightly said that we must improve our revenue collection, not by raising trade taxes through import duty, because that will create another inflationary effect to the poor people. So we must reduce the import taxes or trade taxes. At the same time, we should improve VAT and income tax collection, again, not by raising the tax rate, but by improving our efficiency. And definitely, we have enormous scope of doing that. But unfortunately, we fail to digitalize our, even formal economy. We also fail to capture the informal economy into the taxation system. So in that perspective also, we have enough to do. It may take time, but definitely if we can improve the governance, if we can improve the efficiency of the taxation system, and if we can stop the leakages, and if we can even collect the lost revenue, through our different types of effort mechanism that we have in our law, I think there is enormous scope of increasing the tax revenue from our side as well. And there is no alternative of this. Digitization, especially, we are getting benefit from digitizing the personal tax return. Today, I spent at least 2 to 3 hours sitting with my team. They are also working on digitizing the corporate tax return. In next year, we will be able to digitize both corporate tax and income tax. And regarding the introduction of property tax, in fact, when you talk about the property tax, in many cases, that basically refer to municipal tax, that the holding tax. But previously we have our wealth tax system in Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan. All these 3 countries, we abolished this. Now we are getting suggestion for reintroducing the wealth tax again. Although there are some suggestion reverse that says wealth tax, the valuation of wealth is very cumbersome. The litigation is huge, and the current one that we are collecting, the wealth-based searchers, is easy and is, it comes with income tax return. So we should not go for that. However, our team is working on that, and when we will be sitting with our policymakers, definitely we'll try to introduce. If we introduce wealth tax again, the wealth tax return, gift tax return, all will be digitalized and simplified, so that we can get the benefit. People cannot avoid especially the rich people, rich taxpayer who are liable to pay wealth tax. They should pay their part. So this year we have started the budget exercise. We have asked even ICMAB, ICAB, and all the stakeholders, the chambers, to give their suggestion. Once we get this, we will analyze, and our approach of this year's budget will be definitely maximizing tax revenue, but not compromising employment, not compromising trade facilitation, not compromising, justice and equity. So with this few words, I want to stop here because we will be listening from our chief guest. Thank you very much.
ভাই আপনি আনমিউট করতে হবে, আপনাকে শুনতে পাচ্ছেন না। আরিফ ভাই আনমিউট করতে হবে।
আনমিউট করেন। Arif bhai, you need to unmute.
I'm sorry, actually it was muted from the administrator side. Anyway, Honorable NBR Chairman, I would like to request you to stay a bit more to give us some thoughts on what kind of reforms you are pursuing at this point in time, so that a huge number of members and other people are here, so they would like to listen a bit more from your reform initiative on NBR and what is happening at this point in time, if you have time. Am I audible?
Yes.
So
Yes.
our NBR chairman is here. I don't know whether he has left or not. So if he is not here, I would like to request our honorable paper presenter, Mr. Tawfiqul Islam Khan, to elaborate a bit more that what kind of, we just got our NBR chairman.
I'm here.
Yeah,
I just got a call from Bangladesh Bank governor, so I was talking with him.
Our lot of members has got interest in knowing what kind of reforms NBR is now pursuing. I think that will enrich us in this very important topic. So if you can just dwell upon extra 5 to 10 minutes on those area.
In fact, we want to improve transparency, so that taxpayer, for example, the biggest complaint we are getting from the taxpayers regarding audit selection process, that it is arbitrary, it is not objective, and it is not risk-based. So the very first thing we did, we stopped selection of manual audit in both income tax and VAT. And in VAT side, we have developed, because in VAT, for many years, taxpayers are submitting their tax return through online. But I found that when I was trying to introduce the risk-based audit selection, and I found that there are many taxpayers, they cannot lodge their tax return online because they used to submit manually, and unless their manual returns has not been digitalized, they cannot carry forward. So in that perspective, we just devised a mechanism. We allowed the taxpayer themselves that you enter your return in the previous returns, hard copy returns, in the tax system. So that is already going on very good pace. And then we have already identified the risk criteria, and we have started selection of audit cases based on risk criteria. Very recently, we started joint audit because the taxpayer is same. So when a VAT audit team goes to the taxpayer's premises, again the income tax audit team, it goes another time, then it gives trouble to the taxpayer, number one. Number two is in many cases, the turnover is same, expenditure same, but both the team, they don't share information with each other. So now we have selected 16 cases for the first time that the common team, they will go for audit and they will make assessment for both income tax and VAT together. That is another thing. Then we have introduced that the Aseguda information, from Aseguda system about all imported products, the quantity, the value, and also the advance income tax paid. Because I have seen many taxpayers, they are suffering with getting tax credit of advance income tax because the customs data were not available to the income tax people. Now we have allowed the income tax officers get access to the Aseguda system, so they get all information about the import data. So for the assessment purpose, for matching the import data with their cost of goods sold, or also matching the import data against their turnover, or giving credit from the import data, that is very easier now. So in many cases, we try to digitalize and sharing information. And very recently, we have started publishing all import data, monthly import data, in our NBR website, so that everybody who wants to join in new business, the students who want to make the research, even the researcher who need data for authentic research. So we are now publishing all the data in NBR website as well. So there are lots basically we are trying to do. In bond management system, we fully automated the bond management system. So now, whatever services the bonded organizations need to do, they are, especially the UP and UD, that now they can submit their requirement online, and they are getting their certificate and permission online. The national single window also we have implemented, and we have almost around 20-25 certificate, license, and regulatory organizations from which the taxpayer need to take licenses, permit, and etc. Now, within 1 hour, less than 1 hour, the taxpayer are getting these from our national single window. Even for our foreign investors, they need double taxation certificates in various way. So now within the national window system, we devise, the issuance of all the DTA certificates from the national single window. So they do not need to come to tax offices for the certificate. They will submit their request online, and they will get the certificate online. So our target is to minimize the physical presence and to minimize the physical interaction. So the people, the taxpayer, they will sit on their desktop or laptop. They can do everything sitting there, from preparing their tax return and making tax payment directly from their bank account, or through their credit card or debit card or mobile financial services. So the good thing is that we got enormous response from our taxpayers. Last year, around the whole period, we got around 25 lakh plus e-return. This year already around 41 lakh return has been submitted through e-return, and by the end of this month, probably 45 to 46 lakh e-return, is there. And also, the biggest problem of digitizing or modernizing the risk-based audit selection that we do not have data. So this year, even the paper return that has been submitted is very minimum, around 3 lakh. So every week, we have instructed our tax officials to enter the paper return into the system, even the paper return. So we got all the data. Now we can run the program, applying our risk indicators, and then through that we will be selecting the audit cases. Last year we couldn't do that. We just randomly selected around 15,200 audit cases. But this year we will be selecting audit cases through risk-based criteria. So these are the things basically we are doing in income tax and VAT, and also in customs. Thank you. So,
Honorable Moderator, are you there? Yes. So before Moderator actually coming back, I have another important question. Actually, as the learned paper presenter or respected Dr. Taufiqul Islam Khan presented, like to reach at $1 trillion economy by 2034, we need to grow at the rate of 9% GDP. And also we need to collect 15% tax GDP ratio. So my question to IRD Secretary, Chairman NBR, it is a policy discussion. So how do you look at it to reach at that 15% level tax GDP ratio by next 8 to 10 years? What is your reflection on that?
in fact, if we want to achieve that 15% goal, definitely it is challenging. Even in India, their tax GDP ratio is probably around 12.5 to 13%, not 15%. So this is a bit challenging. At this moment, this year, our tax GDP ratio is around 6.7%. So making it more than double is really challenging. But if we can bring all the formal taxpayer and informal sectors into the tax net, it is not impossible, but definitely it is very, very challenging. One thing can be, if we can, just forget about the cash transactions in the economy, and if we can popularize the digital transaction that is really popular to our marginal people, they have embraced it like anything, especially the mobile financial service, because they are not afraid of tax. But the smart people, they are afraid of, transacting through digital platform, because every transaction is recorded, and then through that record, we can get proper revenue. So if we can stop leakage, from VAT and income tax, and if we can bring the informal sectors also to the tax net, it is not impossible. Definitely, it is very, very challenging. Achieving 15% tax GDP ratio is really very, very challenging. Sorry, I have a phone call.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, so I have actually, our moderator is somewhat disconnected. So I have actually one very special question to our honorable paper presenter, Dr. Taufiqul Islam Taufiq Bhai. So we know our tax GDP, as already we have heard. Another very important aspect is investment, like local investment, public investment, private investment, and also FDI coming as foreign investment to generate industrial activities and obviously to generate employment. So this FDI target 2.5% of GDP, what is your take on this in terms of government agenda taken by BNP?
Well, I try to see these pledges together because they are connected with one another. Say, for example, if we can do implement the FDI targets, then it will be definitely conducive to achieve the growth targets as well. So that is well understood. My estimate suggests that if we take a linear path, we need to grow FDI every year about 50%. Not a very large target in my view. Why I'm saying that? For two reasons. One is the base is very, very low. So our base, when you have a smaller base, it's easier to grow. So I will not term it as a very ambitious FDI target that we cannot achieve. The second thing is that we do have a plan. I think according to the BNP's manifesto, they do have a plan to actually go for offshore bidding in the energy sector, something that we should have done many, many years ago. I would say that this is something that can bring in those FDIs that we try to achieve. So this is the second part of it. So that there is a critical sector where we can actually have a boost in terms of FDI. If it is not possible, of course, this is not possible this fiscal year, but it is very much, if we can start have this process, we should go for it next year. The interim government tried to go for offshore bidding, did not actually succeed. But I think with this new government, elected government, there is a good opportunity to go that. And that is also linked with other pledges that BNP has. My final point is that obviously we know that it will also depend on overall improvement of the investment climate. And those things are there. I don't want to reiterate that what are those areas everybody knows around this table. But my point is that you make some measurable, key targeted approach in terms of attracting FDIs. That is my suggestion would be. For example, let's say in next 6 months, we will fix the problem in the area of leather SEZ in Sharma. We'll fix that. If it is possible, there will be great interest for investor boost that this government is making some real strides in terms of fixing the problems. Similarly, pick 2-3 SEZs where we can start attracting FDI. So I think that is where we are, kind of stumbled over the years. So this is something that we should have to do. Obviously, there are a lot of areas where economic reforms will be required that is linked with FDI. But in my view, it is achievable. But in the past, we have seen that due to lack of economic reforms, we could not achieve more attainable targets. But I want to be hopeful. I feel that it is possible if we can start implementing in those areas.
Thank you very much. Now we will start a few question and answer session from our honorable members. So floor is over to you. If you have any question on this presentation and any discussion on the paper presenter or NBR chair, you are free to ask the questions. Please raise your questions. Thank you very much. After that, we will hear from the chief guest of today. And whenever you raise question, please mention your name and you just raise the question. If anybody, I don't know if anybody doesn't come at this point. Now, I have got one question to the paper presenter. that what you mentioned, that to raise the tax GDP ratio to 15% from the current 7%, how realistic is it to raise that in next 8 to 9 years time? And what how you mentioned some ways, or what hard reforms we need to do to reach, at least exceed even 10%.
Should I go now?
Yeah, please.
Well, I would say that it is possible. I mean, I strongly believe that. So it is possible. I think our Honorable Secretary has mentioned that in India it is still not 15%. But India is also not a very centralized country. The VAT is a subject to state. So I think those calculations are not there. Then there is a difference in that. So more comparable, if you look at Nepal, they have crossed that threshold in similar 7-8 years. I think if you go back 1.5 decade ago, Nepal was very similar what we are at now. So they managed to break that threshold. So it is possible to do it in Bangladesh. The problem is that we want to make sure that the tax evasion is something that we can handle. I think this is where we should focus on. So my first suggestion would be in the area of having an integrated. Oh my God! Sorry, I'm talking being muted. Okay, let me start again. I strongly believe that it is possible. I feel that India is not a centralized country. VAT, for example, is a subject of state. So that calculation is missing on that part. In Bangladesh, every tax, almost everything is very much central. So what we would like to have is a measure where we can actually deal with tax evasion. That is where I think we should focus on. So even if we go for a digitalized taxation system, which is not something new, if I can recall that there is a modernization of tax program started back in 2007-8, did not improve much. We actually had seen a declining tax GDP ratio. So my humble view is that we have an integrated tax system, digitalized system. What do I mean by that? I'm giving a simple example. This is something we actually proposed a few months ago when we prepared a citizens manifesto on part of citizens platform. My idea is that, say for example, I am now giving. I've just submitted my income tax return. I do not need to put all my, say for example, bank accounts details or my assets manually there. My data with BRTA should be integrated there. So that will reflect how many cars I have. My data for bank account should be automatically called from the Bangladesh Bank database. My income tax, my land holding data should be coming from the land offices, or the holding tax the information should come from the local government databases. So you have an integrated database based on your national ID, and it is very much possible. So when you do that, it is then not possible for someone to actually evade tax. You can use data if you do have a electronic database. Thankfully, we will have that, because now it is mandatory to have tax returns. We can actually establish who are the flat owners, for example, in Dhaka city, if we can integrate it, that are not necessarily submitting the taxes. Tax returns. So I think this is where we should have ambition. At this moment, we do have a project with World Bank that again is now looking into digitalization of tax system in a silo approach, something that we should avoid. We should try to use these resources to have an integrated database, and it's not very difficult. I think this is something where the government should focus on. My second suggestion that I had is that to have a modern property tax or wealth tax system in the form of inheritance tax, and BNP has that pledge in the election manifesto, and rightly so. In fact, many advanced countries, capitalist countries that follow liberal economy has such programs. This is not necessarily to collect taxes only, but to also have a social justice system that improves tax collection in the form of income tax and corporate tax. Similarly, for corporates, I think their customs data, VAT data, and income tax data should come together, because as professionals, you are the guys, you can actually tell that this is where we lack transparency. So what we should promise to the taxpayers, be it corporate or individuals, two things. One, that once we have this transparency, we will reduce the tax rate so that marginal tax burden will be reduced on honest taxpayers. Number two, when you collect those tax revenue, we will make sure that tax money is spent with the principle of value for money. Many taxpayers do not necessarily believe that if I pay tax, it will be spent in the welfare of the country. So unless we deal with corruption, unless we deal with public expenditure where we feel that it is well spent, I think taxpayers will not be very incentivized to actually pay tax. I think this is where the focus should be. This is not possible to establish these principles or have this approach in one single year. But if the government can pursue it in 2 years' time, take 2 years' time, I think they will start having results, and only then they'll be able to deliver those election pledges. Otherwise, in our history, Bangladesh's history, there is a very, I would say, discouraging trend that political parties can only pledge, they do not necessarily deliver it on the end. If we do have a democratic system, in 5 years' time, this government will again go to the voters with a lot more confidence that we have delivered the election pledges, and we are again going to pledge some real measures for the citizens, and we are going to deliver. So only then the citizens would like to vote for them as well. So this is not only an economic agenda, this is also a political agenda for any democratic country.
হ্যালো, আমি মোহাম্মদ হুমায়ুন কবির, F651। আমি কি কোশ্চেন করতে পারি?
প্লিজ।
আচ্ছা, আমি যে বাংলায় বলি, আমাদের ইউক্রেন এবং রাশিয়ার যুদ্ধের ফলে আমাদের ইনফ্লেশন 50% বেড়ে গেছে, ফরেন এক্সচেঞ্জ যে ডিভ্যালুয়েশন, এর ফলে আমাদের যে লোন 23 লক্ষ কোটি টাকা লোন হয়ে গেছে। আমার লোনের রিপেমেন্ট এবং ইন্টারেস্ট এবং এদিকে আবার সরকারি বেতন বৃদ্ধির চাপ আমাদের ইকোনমি তো অনেক প্রেসারে আছে। সরকার যে ট্যাক্স এবং ভ্যাট জিডিপি রেশিও তো কম বেশি হলেও মানে কতটুকু আর মানে বাড়াতে পারে, খুব বেশি বাড়াতে পারবে না। আমার মনে হয় যে আমাদের প্রিভিয়াস গভর্নমেন্টও ওয়েল এবং গ্যাস সমুদ্র থেকে এক্সপ্লোরেশনের একটা প্ল্যান করেছিল। এই ক্ষেত্রে ইনভেস্টমেন্ট বাড়ায় আমাদের লোন শোধ করে ইকোনমিতে পজিটিভ ফ্লো আনতে হবে, তাছাড়া তো আমি তো কোনো উপায় দেখতেছি না। বাকিগুলোতে সবগুলোতে বাড়ালেই সবগুলোতে ইনফ্লেশন বাড়বে।
কোশ্চেন থাকে, স্পেসিফিক কোশ্চেন করেন প্লিজ।
কোশ্চেনটা কি, যে বর্তমান গভর্নমেন্টের এজেন্ডাটা কি হওয়া উচিত? গভর্নমেন্ট বর্তমান কোনো পদক্ষেপ কি আছে যে সমস্ত পদক্ষেপগুলো নিয়ে, যে ট্যাক্স কত দূর বাড়াবে, ভ্যাট কত দূর বাড়াবে, হ্যাঁ যেগুলো আছে তার সেগুলো যে বেড়েছে, লোন যে হারে বাড়ছে সেটা তো মিট আপ করা সম্ভব হবে না। সুতরাং আমাদের এজেন্ডা কি হওয়া উচিত? আমাদের এজেন্ডা হচ্ছে আমাদের আমাদের ফরেন ডাইরেক্ট ইনভেস্টমেন্টে আমাদের ওয়েল এবং গ্যাস এক্সপ্লোরেশনের উপরে জোর দেওয়া উচিত সমুদ্রে।
না ঠিক আছে, আপনার অবজারভেশনটা বুঝতে পেরেছি, এবং অ্যাকচুয়ালি পেপার প্রেজেন্টারও এই জিনিসটাই বলেছেন যে আমাদের এখন তো সিচুয়েশনটা ভেরি চ্যালেঞ্জিং, এবং উনিও ওইটাই বলেছেন যে এনার্জি সিকিউরিটি এনশিওর করার জন্য উই হ্যাভ টু হ্যাভ our integrated long-term policy. So I think thanks for your comments. Any other questions from the participants? Then I have another question. Sorry for
I think there are few questions in the chat box, Q&A box.
Okay, read out those.
Read out. Can you please read out if you have?
Yeah, I have it. Okay, same question. Oh yeah, the person who says, okay, the question is in present agenda can increase investment and employment. For example, canal digging and the family card. In what sector foreign investment expected which increase investment and employment that is positive indicator of economy? Well, these are mostly comments in the Q&A box.
So maybe let me ask you one relevant question.
Yeah, please.
That's very useful at this point in time. The paper presenter mentioned that with this increased oil price of from $70 to $100 level, we would need additional $3 to $4 billion extra payment. Normally it takes $6 billion. And he also mentioned that fertilizer prices also go up. So my question is that and he also mentioned that reserves can deplete very fast in this scenario. My question is that what is your view and outlook by the year end about the Taka US dollar exchange rate? You indicated that there can be more depreciation. I would request you to highlight a bit more on this scenario, because that will have an impact on inflation in everybody's life.
Arif, that's the $1 million question. I think I could earn a lot of money if I could predict that correctly. I think I will not give a direct answer because it will depend on the depth of the crisis, and as I said, it will depend on the longevity of the war. We are very unsure what the current situation is and how long it can go. So that is number one. Number two is this is not about the normal price issue. Even during the Ukraine war and others, we had a price issue, not necessarily a supply issue in that way. Why I'm saying that is that we do have certain long-term agreements in terms of importing our fuels. So there are some spot purchases and there are some long-term agreements where you have a kind of hedging mechanism. So that is something I would say that the only government can give you a more appropriate answer, that how far this can be an issue. The second question is that it will depend on the government that how long they can actually hold the exchange rate and how long they want to hold it. My humble suggestion to the government would be that you use both the current reserve and also depreciate Taka a little bit, because my another suggestion was to actually improve fiscal space. They should also phase out the incentives for remittances and export. And my suggestion would be that to align exchange rate with the market as much as possible, because it helps to contain exchange rate with the market, and that will help them also to bring more foreign exchanges to the official market, not with the hundi market. That is one of the challenges that we face in Bangladesh. So it serves that purpose, and then it will also help to reduce the irregularities within that system. The challenge will be again to the fiscal space, because if you want to transfer that increased oil prices to payment for pass-through that enhanced price, then it will be a challenge. Because for petroleum, it is now more or less market-based. I know that BPC does make some certain profits. If it has a profit margin over the years, I don't know how much that was transferred to the government, because certain SUEs transfer their profits to the government. They do not necessarily have that cash flow, but they can use that space for this time for certain months. And then, so it will be a management issue. I think from that vantage point, the government has taken a decision not to raise petroleum prices immediately, but definitely it will have an impact on the subsidy requirement, particularly in the electricity generation perspective.
Okay.
So I think it will depend on that, but we can expect a depreciation if this war goes on, say, for another week.
Thank you very much. Thank you, dear audience. This is now we'd like to hear from our chief guest, Professor Dr. Rashid Al Mahmood Titumir, Honorable Advisor to the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance and Minister of Planning. I'd like to give our microphone to him to listen from him. Mr. President, is he online?
Just a moment. Actually, he was online and he has also taken off. So 2 minutes requested, 2 more minutes. So I have a question actually, in fact, pertinent discussion. So after 2 minutes, we shall hear our honorable chief guest, sir would join. So I have actually a question. In fact, inflation, it is a must talk issue. Prolonged inflation last almost 4 years plus, starting Q1 2022 till now. At times it was almost 12%, and also 3 months back it has shown a symptom of getting down at 8.17%, then 8.49, now again 9% level. So I don't know whether it is fiscal policy, monetary policy, or demand supply, or too many buyer, less of supply. So what is your take? Because it is affecting as an individual citizen of the country to each one of us, and also it is affecting our national growth as a whole. The economy is actually suffering at times because of the Western fuel price and so many other things. After COVID and Russia-Ukraine war, inflation was important. But after that, many economies in our part also, like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, they have very successfully, even India, controlled their inflation. But for us, it has actually become a, I don't know, uncontrollable thing. So what is your take on inflation in very short or longer term view?
The inflation, I think the problem is that it is hurting the poorer section more. And it's a prolonged, because it's a prolonged inflation, you rightly said. What is also important that for last 3 or 4 years, the wage inflation or wage rate increase in wage rate index has consistently been below the inflation rate. So the real income for people is actually has gone down. That is what the difference that will definitely have an impact on Bangladesh. But my suggestion would be that what we try to do is to reduce inflation to some extent by what we call the demand management, pursuing demand management through monetary policy. But real challenge should be on the supply side. Now, for supply side, there is a new challenge definitely coming from the external sector. On top of that, we should, what I think Professor Bidisha has pointed out, that we should also pursue a strategy where we can improve supply side with better incentives for the supply of particularly agriculture products and domestic production. So my suggestion will be when you prioritize the public expenditure, fiscal policy, that is where the government should focus on. And I think that number one will be fertilizer prices, because also due to the domestic gas issue, we are not necessarily pursuing a lot of domestic production in that area. But definitely this is one of the issues that we should focus on, and particularly with the new Boro crop coming, this is where the first focus will be in the next couple of months.
Thank you, Arif Bhai. Our honorable chief guest can speak now. Sir is here. I think we can see.
We all are waiting to hear from him. Honorable chief guest, sir, to you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been privileged to join you from a remote area of Bangladesh, because today we were introducing the family card, one of the major path-breaking social safety net program that any developing countries in the world has ever witnessed, because this is an universal social protection mechanism that has not been, even China doesn't have universal social protection system. So it's a good thing, and that too is happening in the month of March, which is our glorious Liberation War month. So thank you, ICMB, is to speak before you and your fellow members, as well as I'm sorry that I couldn't really have the privilege of listening to the wise words of your fellow colleagues and distinguished discussant. Nevertheless, I will try to make a guesstimate. I'm not sure how far I would be able to make an assumption on the topic and the issues that you have been discussing. However, I will try to figure out, as I could imagine that there had been a perhaps discussion in terms of macroeconomy, then an investment, and the third would be about the fiscal side of it. If I assume correctly, then I'll try to come up with what we believe in and what the people have entrusted us, and how do we move forward. So as you know, and we do not want to discuss it and take your time, we inherited, hardly there are any governments in the world has inherited an economy like this. Be it in institution, be it in terms of tax, be it in terms of expenditure, be it in terms of debt, be it in terms of household debt, be it in terms of private sector investment, you name it. And the disastrous one that we inherited is that of our risk. Credit risk has been going down and down. Secondly, our sovereign risk in terms of moving from low to moderate. So we have to navigate in this world, but we are sure, because we do not talk, but we act. And you have noticed that how we walk the talk. If you really look at the first cabinet meeting, provided the great relief that has been appreciated by every corner of the society. The waiver and relief of the 10,000 taka agriculture loan had really benefited when we, as every think tanks and research organization have been suggesting that there has been an increase in poverty. So what we address that we need relief and rejuvenation of the rural economy, and that we acted and we have delivered. Secondly, and you might be really happy to note that when we announced it and we delivered it. So when we were discussing about this pilot program, family pilot program, everyone showed in their message that they have got that money. And this too, what economists have been always suggesting, and other researchers too, that our social safety net is plugged by inclusion error, exclusion error, and fragmentation. And that can be only addressed through universal processes. And we have pursued a scientific process of PMT. And you are free to do any research, and we invite independent research to look at, because this is a pilot project, we might have been further are benefited by your insights and wisdom. But what we could say for sure that these three problems that the literature we see that has been addressed. And I say that if there could be any error or omission, then we would be ready to correct it. But what we have done, that there is no political interference in the social security distribution. So, and that too, when the inflation, we have not been able to keep it checked, despite many experimentation by many people. So what we could say for sure that since given the inflation that we had to endure, we are coming up with policies that could lead to welfare of the people. Secondly, in terms of, you see, we are talking about a different model. So we would be coming up with a farmer's card, then we would be also coming up with other relief programs for people, so that given the inflationary pressure, people can maintain their living. So having said that, the first thing, the social security and the major changes that we have brought forward in terms of universalization, no targeting error, and others. So I would come into and talk about the model that we want to pursue. We call this model as democratization of the economy, because as we know that the system itself requires democratization, and we also need to have democratization of the economy itself. So what do we mean by that? So we mean by that we want to allow everyone to be part of the economy. And NBER, I saw that NBER chairman is here, and NBER chairman and I were in a discussion about capital market, and where we discussed how we can really make sure that everyone moves from the debt-driven economy to a equity owner economy. And how do you ensure that everybody takes part in the economy? How do you ensure that there is a capital market where someone is involved in mutual fund, someone is involved in different criteria, so that we create a ownership culture, ownership economy, not a debt-based economy. So we have discussed that, but I would go into that. What is the model that we need to move forward? Instead of really a tweaking, we have to really have a quantum leap in terms of the model that we want to do. So we want to go for, I would have to finish by 4:59. How many minutes would I be allocated? Because
no, sir, you carry on.
Okay. Because I don't want to keep everyone waiting and penalized like the previous regime. Sorry. So that's why I asked the chairman, how much time do I have? So given that, so we are talking about a different model. What we mean by a different model, if you really look at and analyze the gross domestic product, you see a preponderance of consumption. It's essentially consumption that has led to the output growth. So what we need is a different one. We need an investment-led growth. And that is what our all policies are. And that really lead us, how do we move towards an investment-driven economy? And this is where our emphasis is. So we are saying that our economic causation is investment, production, employment, tax. So given the current status, we won't be able to really pursue we have to repurpose our fiscal policy to pursue an expansionary fiscal policy with checks and balance in terms of leakage, because our major emphasis is leakage. And I would give you an example, and I'm sure NBER chairman has given it, but if he has missed it, then I would, or if he has given it, I would re-emphasize it, that we have already instituted 3 task forces to find out the leakage. Because leakage is everyone knows that we had, until recently, we had a market for SROs. There is a market. There was a market. So all are these subsidies, rebate culture were never is based on performance based. Rather, it's, and we have to really move on from the traditional reliance on the customs to those of VAT and income tax. So we have formulated 3 task forces. They would be working on it, and let's see. You might have a skepticism about our targets. We would see it, welcome it, because that's what academics should do. But what we can say that our target is very modest. We pursue strategic pragmatism. So we have targeted 15% of the tax GDP ratio in 2035. And we want to see not a quantum lift, but a 2% lift very soon. And you will hear it. I'm not disclosing the year, but you would very soon hear about this in our budget speech, because you need to have something in surprise, right? We cannot give you what the model itself, and one could easily also get it. What would be the level of 10% what year and 15% what year? So we are working in terms of finding the leakage and having a realistic target. That's our revenue strategy. So leakage, if we can, and the third one, obviously, we want to find out areas, and we want to see and explore you might have discussed about property tax and wealth tax. We would explore it, we would study it, and we would see. We would also want to see how we can address transfer pricing and others. But definitely we would explore different alternatives, but obviously we would increase sin tax. So we are not increasing tax rate, but we would be able to expand our absolute amount of taxes. Because if there is a journalist, we must be very careful, because we are not talking about increase of the rate. What we are talking about is absolute resource mobilization. So that we are sure of it, because that's our history and we are sure of it. Then in terms of what now I would really like to speak, and that's why I accepted this invitation. Because the problem is our market is not working. And organizations like ICMAB and its regulator has a role to play. And this is where we have to discuss, because we have been talking, there are 2 extremes. One extreme, if you leave everything on the part of the government, then there would be over-regulation. There would not be a prudential regulation. That would lead to leakage and high corruption. Then if you leave it without market-based regulators, that would also lead you, like the same way, the rise of oligarchic capitalism. So what we saw, most of the perils come from that market-based regulators were not performing. So we need to see that our auditors, we need to see our assessors, we need to see our lawyers, we need to see our credit rating agencies, we need to see our consumer rating agencies to function. Because that's how you can really do the job of a regulation. And that is missing. Because if you really look at why this financial health of the banks, auditors certified, assessors. Now if I have an asset management company, what would it sell? Someone from living in the sky might say, oh, I can solve the banking crisis problem by instituting an asset management company, without having an idea that what is the asset that company has against the advance the bank has made. So this is a big area. If we want to have an investment, if we want to really ensure, then we need to move towards self-correcting market regulating agencies to be empowered and to be accountable and to play its role. And that's a major mistake. And ICMABA has a major role to play, because we don't say market is really acting. Market is by any form or any way, market is trying to act like an oligarchic rentier process where these professions, auditors, assessors, credit rating agencies, consumer rating agencies, look at what these credit rating agencies were doing. So let's ask ourselves, let's really allow the cost of doing business to go down. And the only way to go down is to have in place market-based regulators who can ensure that we are not in a robber baron capitalism. And that's where I think both professional bodies like you and as well as your regulators like FSS among others to play. Because where is that reward and punishment system? Because everybody is certified those banks, isn't it? And they are top. So I would really request that we need to have because I'm so happy that you people are having this dialogue, and I'm happy to help in terms of how do we ensure that there is a market-based regulators who can ensure transparency, accountability. And we would also, government is committed to have a whistleblower policy so that we know how do we act. And I would finish by finally the fiscal policy and monetary policy coordination. This is a major area, and we need to really move, because given, as you know, that I don't want to discuss it, though if I would have been given time, I would have discussed the 5 foundations of the BNP manifesto, which has now become the mandate, because that has been overwhelmingly voted. So it has become now the national plan, which has 5 plans. The first one being the reforming the state. Second one is the achieving equitable socio-economic development and sustainable state capacity. Third is restoring, rebuilding and reconstructing a fragile economy. Fourth is this is unique in the history of Indian subcontinent, or I would rather say in the history of South Asia, where we are now talking about also balanced regional development. And fifth one is very important, because in these days of divisive, pluralizing politics, we want to see that solidarity in terms of religion, ethnicity, caste, creed, so that we can really make sure that we live in harmony and we live in solidarity. So I could have discussed this, but I would finish, or I would be happy to respond any question if you want to extend and on any other issues. So the last point is fiscal and monetary policy coordination, because as you know that our model is investment, production, employment, and tax, which means that this requires a harmonization with the monetary policy. So we would definitely expect the central bank to harmonize its monetary policy in terms of having growth as the major target with employment, like those which have been pursued by, say, if you want to borrow an analogy, Janet Yellen in Federalism. So we want to see, and we would expect, but we believe in the because Bangladesh Bank is a self-ruled statutory body, but definitely we have a regular meeting in terms of fiscal monetary coordination, where we would expect that central bank would come up with this growth and employment as their goal, because that would ensure that we are in harmony, because this is also required in terms of coordination. And more so, we have to really look at, because given the persistent inflation, what does the story tell? The story tell is otherwise, because if you really look at and divide, but I would also expect, since there are several academics and think tanks colleagues are here, they can and study whether the way this is done in Bangladesh would really be applicable. Because if you really look at most of the countries, they look at persistent sources of inflation, which is core inflation. But if you really look at Bangladesh, it's headline inflation, food and energy, that really rise the inflationary pressure. So if you are targeting, if you are coming up with interest rate, how prudent that, I don't know. But this is a big question, because your inflationary pressure comes comes essentially from the headline inflation, not core inflation. Then how would you like to see that interest rate, keeping the interest rate would allow you to really lower the inflation? That's a bigger question, empirical question, as well as how it is passed through. And the last mite, I don't know whether you have raised the issue of the recent crisis that has happened in the global scale, particularly in terms of Middle East and our energy security. Government is obviously is looking at it, is working on it. And as you know, and you can trust on us, that every crisis, the BNP government has always made opportunity out of it. And I would finish by giving that example. If you remember 1973, when there was an oil shock, oil crisis, what happened? Everybody was in BOP problem. But what happened in Bangladesh case, while the Gulf countries were having surplus capital, and Bangladesh is flooded with surplus labor, Bangladeshi President Ziaur Rahman converted that crisis into an opportunity by making sure that our surplus labor is given that export, so that our economy gets a new momentum. So I'm sure we would, with your cooperation and assistance and the participation by everyone, we would be able to address the crisis the way we have historically addressed, and through your active participation, accountability, and the state that we want to like to see, we would definitely achieve that. So I would finish here. If you have any question or anything.
Yes, I have a question. If the moderator allow me, I have a question, sir, to ask you. You have said in your lecture that you want to ensure growth with equity and justice. But my question is, what we are now saying is that growth is there, and side by side, the income inequality is also there. The skewed income with the growth. But you have told the very optimistic idea is that growth with equity and justice, and how you will ensure growth with equity in a situation where the income inequality is rising. Thank you, sir. I'm Abdullah Sarkar, the retired area
Honorable Member, got limited time. It is almost 5:15. The program was scheduled to finish at 5. So I would request not to ask any more questions. Let the chief guest answer this, and then we come to our Vice President share his vote of. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I should have come much earlier and answered all of your questions. I do not have answers, but I do have historical track record, and I do have empirical work, and I do have what we have conveyed as a commitment. We are translating every word into action. So can you give me a government in Bangladesh's history, or for that matter in South Asian history, that has acted all the commitments within, even it has not crossed a month. let alone 100 days or 180 days. The first cabinet meeting provided the largest relief to the farmers. And as a cost and management account, you would also appreciate that has also given at least 3 reliefs to the banks, right? Because when we waived it, banks' balance sheet has also seen its impact. Secondly, who are 50% is women. Our track record suggests that we allowed largest amount of women in formal labor force participation. Ready-made garment started and we saw it. And we also initiated a stipend program. So we are today initiating the family card, which is universal. So it would not be blocked by inclusion, exclusion errors. And since it is universal, so there is no scope for political manipulation. And third, we are very soon coming up with the farmers card. And we are expecting we would be able to launch the farmers card on Pohela Boishakh. Because as you appreciate, our agriculture is tied to the whole agriculture calendar, which is Bangla calendar, Bangla short. So we are committed to it. And most importantly, what we need is employment, because we have a huge underemployment and unemployment. And then this chunk of the people not in employment, education, and training. So we are aware of it, and we would really look into it. And that requires, as industry leader like you would see that it requires skills. There is a huge skills gap, and we need to address that skills gap. And we are talking about not only about different in education, in language, because if Japan is now asking us to they are giving us demand, but that requires at least an N5. So we need to skill that up. So what I'm saying is that this is a government. So if you want to, I would finish by saying very simple words that we were landed during Ziaur Rahman is a country struck by famine and the bad name and shaming of the bottomless basket. He transformed into a viable state. Everyone acknowledged that. Secondly, and most importantly, during Khaleda Zia's time, we saw economic modernization. At least I could give you 5 examples. The highest amount of reduction in poverty in the history of Bangladesh. Almost 20 million people were lifted out of poverty. We talk about China, but we never talk about Bangladesh. Second, if you really look at in terms of, there was a structural change. For the first time during Begum Zia's time, the share of the agriculture surpassed the share of the agriculture. Thirdly, that doesn't mean that we saw a contraction in agriculture. But what we see is that particularly in terms of boro production, that led us to near self-sufficiency in food production. And that also reduced our hunger. Then in terms of fourth, which is very, that we saw active participation of women in labor force. So I could go on. So what I am saying that Khaleda Zia provided us economic modernization, and we are hopeful that Bangladesh would lead amongst its South Asian neighbor, a state that for which our liberation fighters fought. a state that could ensure equality, a human dignity, and social justice. So the whole idea is an economy for all and an economy, a welfare state. Because we have to do it. We have no alternative. Because we don't want to be caught in that irony that Lord Beveridge, who was the architect of a welfare state in post-Second World War era, was born in Rangpur. And Rangpur people do not want to be shamed for being the poorest region in Bangladesh. Can we bear that shame? So we are not hopeful. Our history, our evidence suggests that we can deliver and we would deliver. Thank you for having me. I would really express my gratitude to Mr. Kausar Alam for being so persistent about me, because I have to, you know, that what you have to do, because I have to get up at 5:30, then come and inaugurate this farmer's cart. Then there was a firing that took place in a shop. We have to visit it. Then we are having this Upozela meeting with. So it's a learning area, and we want to see that our manifesto is translated into actions. So thank you again, and I'm sorry I couldn't hear the wise words of my colleagues Saima Haq Bidisha, Tawfiqul Islam Khan, and my colleague in NBR chairman. I'm really sorry I couldn't catch up. I would soon catch up with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your very, very inspiring speech. You have touched so many areas of our economy, and we are all excited with your leadership. I'm sure the dreams that you have shown Bangladeshi people will enjoy better days in future. With these few words, I would like to now invite our Vice President of the Institute, Mr. Abdullah Al Mamun, Dr. Abdullah Al Mamun, to offer a vote of thanks. And with that, we will conclude today's webinar.
Okay, thank you very much. This is Soyed Abdullah Al Mamun. He's a council member and the Vice President of the Seminar and Conference Committee, as well as the Professor of Financial Economics and Policy of BRAC University. So this is on behalf of the organizing committee. This is my great privilege to convey the sincere gratitude to our esteemed chief guest, special guest, keynote speaker, discussant, as well as all participants and the organizer. Special thanks to our today's chief guest, Professor Rashid Al Mahmood Titumi, who has not only shared the vision and the philosophy of the welfare state of Bangladesh, but also he has shown some examples and actions which have been already taken. And I believe that with this continuation, Bangladesh will get back its growth momentum and build its resilience and overcome all the problems. And this, sir, your speech is not only inspiring, also it gives us a guidelines as a professional, how we can play our role as well to contribute in the noble journey you have started along with the government initiatives. I would like to also convey my special thanks and a deep appreciation to the special guest, the NBR chairman, who has elaborately explained us the initiatives, recent initiatives, and the revolutionary transformation of the NBR. Also, the keynote speaker widely explained about the current challenges the Bangladesh economy is facing, and also the recent development of the global economic challenges and the Middle East crisis and how it will affect Bangladesh and the possible remedies. And also discussant Professor Bidisha nicely explained that how those challenges can be tackled in a more robust way and a sustainable way. And also the participants, all are professionals who were keenly listening all the expert opinion, and also especially the chief guest direction. I hope that all will carry the principal democratization of the economy and all the learnings which will not only enlighten them, but also will help them to play their respective role, particularly in the area governance and the accountability and the market information, which is highly emphasized of the credit rating as well as the auditing services and also preparing financial information. Last but not least, the all organizing committee and our respected president with his capable leadership, we are able to organize this program. And finally, all the staffs of ICMB and all the participants, everyone, thank you very much. And I'd like to stop here with conveying our sincere gratitude to the all martyrs and the freedom fighters in the month of the independence of Bangladesh. Wishing the good luck to all of you and looking forward for a shining economic prosperity of Bangladesh and the resilient Bangladesh with the participation of all inclusive effort. So thank you again. Thank you very much.
Especially thank you to Honorable Chief Guest, Sir. We shall invite you in person sometime down the line to hear you more from you, because you are a living economist, like dealing with living thing now rightly in action. So sometime at your convenient time, we shall be happy to invite you at our institute. And also we want to contribute in this nation building journey along with your efforts. Thank you, sir. And also thank you, Tawfiq Bhai.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.